One of the arguments we're going to look at comes from our old friend Bertrand Russell, who we met during our discussion of the problem of other minds. For today, you hopefully read the first chapter of Russell's The Problems of Philosophy, in which he presents an argument for the conclusion that you never directly perceive ordinary objects. I'm going to briefly run through that argument now. Russell asks us to consider a table, which is every philosopher's favourite example of an ordinary object. My table here is a bit roughed up, but pretend it's a new table, fresh out of the table factory. We ordinarily think that objects like this have the same colour all over. But notice that, when we view the table from a particular angle, some parts of the table appear to have different colours from the other parts, depending on which bits are reflecting the most light towards your eyes. For example, in this photo of my table, notice that the right-hand side is reflecting so much light that it appears almost white. For another example, notice that the legs appear to be a much darker brown than the surface. All in all, the colours we perceive the parts of the table as having are not the colours which we like to think the parts of the table really have. Notice too that as we move around the table appears to change colour. It appears to be a lighter colour under some conditions and darker under others. The parts which looked particularly bright in the first photo I showed you at times now look much darker, and the parts which looked dark in the first photo I showed you at times now look lighter. Russell even goes so far as to claim that the apparent shape of the table changes as you view it from different angles. Sometimes its surface is diamond-shaped, sometimes it looks like a trapezoid. If you look at it from a perfect bird's-eye view, it appears square, and so on. From all this, Russell concludes the following. It's evident, he says, from what we've found, that there's no colour which preeminently appears to be the colour of the table. It appears to be of different colours from different points of view, and there's no reason for regarding some of these as more really its colour than others. And from this, he draws a very dramatic conclusion. To avoid favouritism, he says, we're compelled to deny that, in itself, the table has any one particular colour. That is, the table, the real table you take yourself to see, isn't coloured at all. Here's an exercise for you. Try and extract a valid argument from the reading to the conclusion that the table isn't coloured. Now Russell extends the argument further. We've already seen that he thinks that the apparent shape of the table changes as you view it from different angles. And he says the same thing about texture as well. Depending on how you're viewing the table, whether you're viewing it from a distance or with a microscope or whatever, the apparent texture of the table is going to change. Same with how it feels. If you wrap the table hard with your hand, it's going to feel different than if you touch it lightly. And even though it would be weird to go around smelling or tasting your furniture, presumably the same kind of argument from variation could happen there. All in all then, Russell concludes that the real table is colourless, shapeless, textureless, and probably tasteless and smellless. So, and this is the principal conclusion of the reading you read, the real table, if there is one, is not the same as what we immediately experience by sight or touch. Now, it's not obvious initially how this conclusion follows from the premises that the real table is colourless, shapeless, textureless, and so on. But we can think about the rough kind of story that Russell will tell. In general, if something is colourless, shapeless, textureless, it's just not the kind of thing which we're able to perceive. If all that's right, though, a natural question now emerges. If we're not seeing the table, what is it that we are seeing? Keep watching to find out.